Hey, welcome to week 3 of History 101, or the first section of Western civilization. So we've now finished our kind of 2 types of weeks. Week 1 was a discussion week, and week 2 was a research week. So week 1, of course, we had the quiz and the two discussion boards, and then week 2 we had a quiz as well, and then the essay to write. And so, in general, those will be the 2 kinds of weeks that we will alternate between going through the term. So week 3 is another discussion week. So you'll have the quiz over the chapter 3, and then the 2 discussion boards. So the first 2 chapters, as you I'm sure noticed, we spent in Southwest Asia. We talked about that irony that the origin of the West is found in the East. And we want to spend time there because that's when we can discover those kind of basic characteristics of civilization, and that's what arises in Mesopotamia from 10,000 BCE to approximately 3,000 BCE. And so those sorts of basic characteristics, we're talking about agriculture, right? About urbanization, about science and technology, about government systems, about organized religion, writing, commerce, social hierarchy, and culture. Those are some of the kind of basics of civilization, which of course we see today. But beyond those basics, the kind of character of any one of those basic elements can take many forms. And when you look back today, when you look to ancient history, and you're looking for the sources of the basic forms, then you want to go back to ancient Mesopotamia. But if you're looking for sources for the specific sorts of forms that we see in the West today, the first culture that you're going to go back to is ancient Greece. And that's where we're going to be in chapter 3 and chapter 4 as well. A great example of that is, even though ancient Mesopotamia spawned governance systems, if you want to look for the specific kind of government system that we find in America today, democracy, then you go back to ancient Greece. So we're going to start looking at some of those less ancient cultures. They're still in the classical era, that give us some of those more specific sorts of forms of civilization that we see demonstrated in contemporary cultures. So a couple interesting points about this chapter that I want to call your attention to. You'll notice that the book talks about the policies, P-O-L-I-S, in ancient Greece, and 2 key ones are Athens and Sparta. But the city-state, the polis, is really an ancient form. We encountered many of those in the first 2 chapters in Mesopotamia. But you flip over to page 91, and you'll see a map there of the Persian Empire. We talked about a number of empires in those first 2 chapters. And in the 5th century, the city-state of Athens and allied city-states like Sparta and others are going to come up against the great Persian Empire. And this is really kind of the first major conflict between kind of European city-state and a Southwest Asian city-state. But the city-state form, this polis, is really an old form, as I just said, and it's going to be quickly displaced by this new form of the empire. And in the next century, in the 4th century, we're going to see that Athens, Sparta, and those other Greek city-states are going to be encompassed within empires. And it's really going to be for the next 1,000 years or so through the Roman Empire that city-states are no longer dominant. It's empires that are going to dominate the West. Another noteworthy item is the short discussion in the chapter about same-sex love. Same-sex love in ancient Greece, specifically Athens, was not an anomaly. It wasn't unusual. It wasn't even illegal. In fact, it was expected of, in particular, males of the Athenian aristocracy. And the idea was that a 20s or 30-something male would act as a mentor and lover to a adolescent male, providing that male with guidance to society, gifts, and as I said, kind of basic mentorship to how to negotiate Athenian society. So it's not always the case that we 21st centurions can claim that there's nothing about the past that is in any way superior to the present, because of course it's only been recent decades, that same-sex love among women, among males and females, has become accepted. The third item to bring your attention to, on page 100, there's a discussion about slavery, an institutionalized form of violence. And do note what the authors claim about the relationship between Greek social accomplishments and slavery. They are intertwined. We've seen in the past couple of years here in the West, America in particular, all sorts of discussions about income and wealth inequality. Well, you read that section in Greece, and it might complicate your feelings and your positions about inequality, whether it's a good thing, bad thing, productive thing, or unproductive sort of thing. So this week, assignments. We have the quiz, and we also have our 2 discussion boards. So the first discussion board takes up that claim that Socrates makes, that the unexamined life is a life not worth living. Socrates, really kind of the first major philosopher in Western history, and he makes his claim. So I ask you to take up that claim and share what you think about that claim. And this sort of discussion, there really isn't a right or wrong answer. It's more about better supported answers, lesser supported answers. So certainly strive for a better supported answer. And the second discussion concerns Athens and Sparta. Already mentioned these 2 city-states of ancient Greece. They're kind of the 2 primary city-states, but they are different, very different sorts of city-states. When you think about the cultural artifacts that have come down to us today, sorts of artifacts you find in museums that have come down to us from ancient Greece, in general, nothing comes to us from Sparta. Sorts of things that we find come from Athens and other non-military cultures. Sparta is a militaristic culture. Athens is not. For anyone who has seen the film 300, Zack Snyder's film of 2006, you get a very good idea of militarized Sparta. There's that great scene from the film in which Leonidas, king of Sparta, and his men encounter one of the allied groups, Acadians, and he asks the Acadians, so what are your vocations? One person says, I'm a potter. Another person says, I think I'm a blacksmith. So all these various vocations that these fighters have. And then Leonidas asks his own men, what are your vocations? And from their response, it's very clear that they are warriors. They are not dramatists. They are not blacksmiths. They are warriors. That is their vocation. And clearly, it is that vocation that is dominant, superior, and highly valued in Sparta. So, your discussion prompt, as you take up this challenge that you are living in 2015, creating a new nation, and you only have the 2 models, Sparta and Athens, right? which one are you going to choose and why? So be sure and read the assignments for those two, because depending on whether your last name begins with a certain letter, you will be arguing in support of Sparta or arguing in support of Athens. So have a great week. See you in the discussion board.